Wyoming Territory, August 1874. The sun had barely broken over the horizon when Levi Zander spotted movement through the morning mist just beyond the ridge where the cottonwoods thinned. He was alone, riding east with a pack mule and a rifle strapped to his saddle, tracing the edge of his family's old grazing land. He had not expected to see a woman tied to a post, barefoot, blood on her cheek, and her dress torn down one sleeve. He pulled his horse to a halt, heart kicking hard. She was slumped at the waist, wrists tied with thick rope above her head to a fence post half-eaten by age and weather. Her hair was a mess of dust and dark curls, head hanging low. "Ma'am?" Levi dismounted fast, boots crunching dry grass. "Can you hear me?" Her head lifted at the sound of his voice. Her eyes, wide and sharp blue, locked onto his. "Cut me down," she rasped. "Please." Levi did not ask questions. He pulled his knife from his belt and sliced the rope free. She collapsed forward and he caught her just in time, her weight light against his chest. "I got you," he said, steadying her. "You're safe now." She pushed back from him, breath shallow. "I need water." He helped her sit against a tree and handed over his canteen. She drained it in seconds, then wiped her mouth with the back of her hand. Her fingers trembled. "What's your name?" he asked. "Hattie," she said hoarsely. "Hattie Monroe." Levi crouched beside her. "What happened?" She hesitated, eyes darting east. "My brothers. They found out I was leaving with a man. They didn't like it." Levi's mouth tightened. "So they tied you out here?" Hattie nodded. "Said if I wanted to shame the family, I could do it alone. They left me here last night." "Damn," Levi muttered, rising to his feet. He looked around. No sign of the brothers nearby, but he knew better than to trust that. "You need to get out of here." Hattie looked up at him. "You gonna help me or not?" He gave her a long look. "You can walk." She nodded, shaky but stubborn. "I can walk." Levi helped her onto his horse, then tied the mule's lead to the saddle horn. He walked beside her as they moved west, toward the old cabin he kept near Split Rock. He had not used it in months, but it would do. "What's your name?" she asked after a while, her voice steadier. "Levi Zander." "You always ride out before dawn?" "Only when I cannot sleep." Hattie looked down at him from the saddle. "You always save women tied to posts, too?" He glanced up at her. "Only when they look like they might bite someone, even when they are bleeding." She let out a dry laugh. "Then I guess you picked the right one." They reached the cabin by mid-morning. Levi helped her down and got her inside, set her on the cot, and fetched another canteen from the mule's pack. He lit a fire, boiled water, and cleaned the cuts on her wrists. She winced but did not flinch. "You got anyone else out here?" she asked. "No," Levi said. "Just me." "What about you? You got somewhere you were heading?" She paused. "I was supposed to meet a man in Medicine Bow. We were going to ride south together, get married in Colorado." "You love him?" Hattie went quiet. "I thought I did. But he left before my brothers caught me. Took my horse and everything." Levi looked at her carefully. "You still want to go find him?" "No," she said, fast and flat. "I want to breathe without someone deciding I ain't worth it." He nodded once. "You can stay here till you figure out your next step." She looked around. "This your land? Used to be my family's. I keep it up some. Fix the fences when I can. You always this kind to strangers?" Levi looked away, jaw tight. "You are not a stranger anymore." She watched him for a long second, something quiet shifting behind her eyes. By afternoon, she was on her feet again, hair braided back, wearing one of Levi's spare shirts belted at the waist. Her dress was too torn to wear, and she had already burned it in the fire pit behind the cabin. They sat on the porch while the sun dipped westward, the world heavy with heat and silence. Levi handed her a cup of coffee. "I do not know what your brothers are like," he said, "but if they left you tied out there like that, I doubt they are done." Hattie took the cup, her fingers brushing his. "They are proud men. Mean, too. They will come for me." Levi met her eyes. "Let them." She blinked. "You would fight my family for me? I would stand between you and anyone who tries to hurt you again." She stared at him, breath caught. "Why?" Levi looked at her hand wrapped around the cup, the bruises on her wrist, then up into her eyes. Because no one should ever be left like that. And because I cannot stop thinking about you. Her lips parted. Levi. The sound of horses broke the moment. 3 riders came over the rise, hard and fast. Hattie stood, her face pale. That is them. Levi crossed the porch in 2 strides and stepped down into the yard. The riders stopped 30 feet out. The man in front had the same sharp blue eyes as Hattie, but colder. His gaze locked on her, then on Levi. You have something that belongs to us, he called. She is not a thing, Levi said. She is a person. And she is not going anywhere she does not want to. The brother laughed. You think you are going to keep her? You do not know what you are getting into. I know enough, Levi said. She is safe here. The man dismounted. You got until sundown to send her out, Cowboy. After that, we come in. He turned and left without another word. His brothers behind him. Levi stood still, fists clenched. Hattie joined him on the ground. You do not have to do this. He looked at her. Yes, I do. Tears welled in her eyes. You do not even know me. He cupped her cheek gently. I do not need to know everything. I know you are worth standing up for. She leaned into his hand, tears slipping down her cheeks. No one's ever said that to me. Levi's voice was quiet. Then they are fools. She looked up at him, heart in her throat. What if they don't leave? Then I will not either, he said. You are not alone anymore. She reached for his hand, lacing her fingers with his. I do not want to run anymore. I want to stay. Here. With you. Levi leaned in, forehead against hers. Then stay. And as the sun dipped lower against the Wyoming sky, she whispered, I am already yours. By the time the brothers disappeared over the rise, the wind had shifted. It came low and dry from the east, stirring dust across the yard and carrying with it the scent of horses and sweat. Hattie stood still, her hand still in Levi's, the weight of her fear not yet lifted but steadied by the feel of his palm against hers. Levi turned first, guiding her gently back toward the cabin. We'll need to ready the place, he said, his voice even. They'll be back. She nodded, jaw set. I can shoot. I've got 2 rifles, he said. One's older, but it'll hold up. Inside, the air held the warmth of the morning fire and the faint smell of pine from the floorboards Levi had scrubbed with boiled needles last spring. Hattie crossed to the table and started rolling up the sleeves of the shirt he'd lent her. Show me what needs doing. Levi opened the trunk beside the hearth and pulled out the rifle. He handed it to her, then set the other one on the table, checking the sights and cartridges without a word. They worked in silence for a while, checking the windows, bracing the door with a length of timber, gathering the water buckets from the well out back. Hattie moved with a kind of quiet efficiency that told him she wasn't new to danger. After a while, she leaned the rifle against the wall and sat on the edge of the cot, rubbing her temple. They'll have a plan, she murmured. My oldest brother, Ezra, he doesn't do anything without one. Levi sat across from her, elbows on his knees. What do you think he wants? Control, she said. Always has. He watched me like a guard watches a prisoner after Mama died. Said it was to keep me safe. But I think he just liked having someone under his thumb. Levi didn't answer right away. Outside, a hawk cut across the sky, its cry sharp and high. He let the silence stretch until Hattie looked up at him. You ever been married? She asked, surprising him. No, he said after a moment. Thought about it once. What happened? She chose someone else. He gave a small shrug. A man with land closer to her people. Made sense. Hattie studied him. You think it'd be different now? He didn't look away. I think I'd do things with more care this time. She swallowed, eyes dark and unreadable. I've never had anyone look at me like I mattered more than the land I was born on. You do, he said simply. Outside, the light shifted again. The sun had begun its slow lean toward the mountains and the air grew heavier. Levi stood and crossed to the window, angling the curtain just enough to see across the bluff. Nothing yet. He lit a lantern and trimmed it low. Do you think they'll try to burn us out? She asked, Could be, he said. Depends how desperate they are. I don't think they care what happens to me, she said. Long as they get to decide how it ends. He turned to her. It doesn't end with them. She nodded, though her hands clenched slightly in her lap. You always been this sure about things? No, he said. But I'm sure about this. As night folded in, they ate what little there was: hardtack, dried venison, and apples that had gone soft at the core. Hattie ate without complaint, though her eyes kept drifting to the door. Levi noticed. We make it through tonight, he said. You can leave this behind. For good. I don't want to leave, she said quietly. Not without you. He stilled. You mean that? She looked up. I've spent my whole life being told I belong to other people. I want to belong somewhere that's mine. With someone who sees me. Levi crossed the room, knelt in front of her, and took her hand. Then stay. I'll build you a place where no one decides your worth but you. Her breath caught, and for a long moment neither of them moved. Then she leaned forward, her head resting lightly against his shoulder. You really think we'll be all right? I do, he said. It's not just hope. It's you and me, and I'll hold that line as long as it takes. Outside, the wind began to rise. The night deepened. But in the cabin, the lantern burned steady, and they did not let go. The wind pressed hard against the shutters as night deepened, carrying with it the scent of dust and dry sage. Hattie sat on the floor with her back against the wall, rifle across her knees, her bare feet tucked beneath Levi's wool blanket. Levi stayed near the door, crouched low, one eye on the window slit he'd cut years ago for watching coyotes that used to circle the chicken pens. Neither of them spoke for a long time. The silence wasn't empty, it held weight, like a rope pulled taut between them. Outside, a coyote yipped once, far off, and then the wind swept it away. I never knew my mother, Levi said, voice low. Hattie looked over at him. Was she local? Came up from Texas with a preacher's family. My father hired her on as cook. She left when I was 3. No note. Nothing. Just gone one morning. Hattie didn't ask why he was telling her now. She just listened. My father never spoke her name again. Buried it deep, like it shamed him. She shifted the rifle off her lap and leaned forward, elbows on her knees. You ever try to find her? I rode south once after I turned 20. Found a man who knew her name. Said she married a freight hauler and died birthing her second son in San Angelo. His eyes didn't move from the dark outside. I reckon that was the end of it. Hattie's voice was quiet. You carry her with you still? He nodded once. I think I always will. A loose board creaked on the porch, sharp and sudden. Levi rose quickly, motioned for her to stay low. He took 2 steps to the window and peered through the slit. A figure moved near the corral, slow and deliberate, not like a man who'd lost his way. Stay behind the table, he said, loading a cartridge into the chamber without a sound. If they try the door, I want you out the back. I'm not running, she said, already on her knees behind the overturned table. You won't be, he said. Just be ready to move. A hard knock hit the door. No voice followed it. Levi raised his rifle. You've got 10 seconds to speak your piece, he said. A man's voice came through, low and familiar. We ain't here to shoot unless we have to. Levi stepped closer. Then right on. She's our sister. She's not your prisoner. Silence. Then the voice again. We want her back. That's all. Hattie stood slowly behind the table. Ezra, she called out. You don't speak for me anymore. A pause. Then his voice, colder now. You think this man's gonna keep you? You think any of this is real? He's already done more for me than you ever did. A bootstep landed heavy on the porch. Levi raised his rifle. That's close enough. We're taking her, Zander. No, Hattie said. You're not. Another step. Levi didn't blink. Then a second voice, one of the younger brothers. She made her choice, Ezra. What? She made her choice, the voice repeated, firmer this time. Let's go. Silas, shut your mouth. No, the younger voice said. You left her tied like a dog. This ain't right. Levi glanced briefly at Hattie. Her mouth was slightly open, breath caught. You walk away now, Levi said, there's no blood. You push this, none of you go back the way you came. More silence. Then slow retreating steps, boots on dry wood, the creak of leather as someone climbed into a saddle. A horse snorted. Levi lowered the rifle just a fraction. Silas, Hattie called out, her voice steady now. You did right. A pause. I'm sorry, Hattie. Then hooves fading west. Levi waited a long minute before stepping out onto the porch. The moonlight showed the tracks clearly, 3 horses headed downslope. He watched until the last one dipped out of sight, then came back in and locked the door behind him. Hattie stood in the middle of the cabin, breath held tight in her chest. They're gone, he said. For good, I think. She nodded. I didn't expect Silas to speak up. You gave him a reason. She looked around the room, then down at her hands. They weren't shaking anymore. I don't know how to live quiet, she said, voice uneven. I've never had peace long enough to figure it out. Levi stepped close, taking her hand. Then we'll learn together. She looked up at him, eyes shining. You mean to stay? I've been here, he said. But now I've got a reason to build. She touched his chest, just over his heart. I thought I'd have to fight for the rest of my life. You still might, he said, voice warm. But not alone. She smiled slowly, and this time it reached all the way up. Then let's start. He pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. Outside, the wind eased. The cabin stood still in the hush that followed. A place no longer waiting to be filled, but becoming something whole. The morning after the standoff broke clear and windless, sunlight spilling over the plains in quiet gold. Levi stepped outside to check the trail, boots sinking into soft earth where dew had gathered in the night. The hoofprints from Ezra's horses were still visible, pressed deep in the dirt and heading west without sign of return. Inside, Hattie moved with slow purpose. She had gathered her hair at the nape of her neck with a strip of linen she'd torn from an old feed sack and was kneeling by the hearth, scraping ashes into a tin bucket. She didn't look up when Levi came in. You always start your mornings with work? He asked, setting his rifle near the door. She wiped her hands on her skirt. I don't know any other way to start them. He leaned against the table, watching her carefully. You don't have to prove anything to me. I'm not trying to. She stood then, brushing her palms. But I won't sit still, waiting for something to break. Levi nodded. There's a shed behind the corral with tools. Some of them rusted, but the handles hold. I saw it. You ever think about putting in a garden? He blinked. Not since the cattle went. Hattie crossed to the window and looked out. If there's a creek near enough, we could run a line, dig a trench. Potatoes would come up easy in the soil. Levi stepped beside her, his voice low. You planning to stay that long? She didn't look away from the window. I wouldn't suggest planting if I meant to leave. He let that settle between them before speaking. There's a spring 1/4 mile east. You can't see it from here, but it runs steady even in dry months. I used to haul from it when I had a mare lame in the leg. She turned to him. I'll need to see it. Can't plan without knowing the water. They set out just after midday, the sun high and the breeze light. Hattie wore a hat of Levi's, wide-brimmed and sun-faded, the band torn but still firm. She carried an empty bucket and walked ahead of him with steady steps, eyes on the trail. Levi followed, watching how she moved through the grass without hesitation, like she'd already decided the land was hers. The spring was tucked between 2 low hills, shaded by a stand of juniper. Water trickled over stone into a pool clear enough to see the pebbles beneath. Hattie knelt, dipped her hand in, and tasted. It's clean, she said, nodding. You thinking of planting before frost sets in? If we cut beds now, maybe get lettuce or mustard in before snow. I've worked colder ground than this. Levi crouched beside her. You worked farms. My uncle's place outside of Cheyenne. After Mama passed, he took me in for a while. Taught me how to read yields and mend fence. He was decent even if he drank too much. You ever think of writing him? He passed 3 winters back. Consumption took him. She ran her fingers through the water. He was the only man I knew who didn't raise his voice to be heard. Levi didn't speak for a long moment. Then he said, I can put up a second wall on the cabin. Give you space of your own. She looked over. You want me to have a room away from yours? I want you to have what you choose, he said. Not what's handed you. She stood slowly, hands wet at her sides. What I choose is to be beside you. But I'd like a door I can close when I need quiet. He smiled not wide, just enough to soften the hard lines around his eyes. Then I'll build it. They walked back as the afternoon slanted toward evening, bucket full and arms brushing now and again. Hattie didn't pull away. When they reached the cabin, he handed her the hat without a word, and she hung it on the doorway peg like it already belonged there. That night, they ate boiled oats with dried currants she found in the back of the cupboard. She added a pinch of salt and stirred the pot while Levi chopped kindling by lantern light. "You ever think about building more than one cabin?" she asked as he came back in, arms full of split pine. "Not till lately." She ladled the oats into 2 bowls and set them on the table. "There's enough land here to raise more than just potatoes." Levi sat across from her. "You thinking livestock? Chickens, maybe? A milk cow if we can trade for one. I know how to keep them fed." He nodded, chewing slowly. "You plan things out quiet-like, but I can see how far ahead you're thinking." "I've had to." She ran her spoon along the side of the bowl. "But this is the first time I've wanted to." After they ate, she washed the bowls while he checked the door latches. The night air had cooled and the moon hung white and round over the grass. Before he banked the fire, she touched his arm. "I never asked what you did before you came here." He turned toward her. "I wrangled cattle for a man near Laramie. He lost everything in a flood and let the hands go. I drifted west and found this place again after my father passed." "You missed that life?" He shook his head. "Not anymore." She stepped closer, her voice soft. "You think we'll be left alone now?" "I think we've got a better chance than most." She reached for his hand. "Then let's make it count." His fingers closed around hers, and this time, neither of them let go. The days that followed settled into a rhythm neither of them had expected. The kind that built itself from repetition and quiet effort. Cut wood, boil water, mend what could be mended. Hattie rose before first light each morning, her hands already moving before her thoughts caught up. Levi found her more than once at the edge of the yard, studying the slope of the sunlight or running her fingers through the soil near the cabin's west wall, already measuring out where she'd dig the garden in spring. One morning, while the frost still clung to the grass tips, Levi returned from checking the line traps to find her standing barefoot on the porch step with a folded scrap of linen in her hand and a look on her face like she'd just stepped into something she hadn't expected to feel. "I found the tin of seeds," she said. He nodded, stepping up beside her. "Left from the last time I tried planting. Didn't take. They were packed tight, sealed good." She turned the packet over once. "There's winter onions in there, Levi. I didn't know. They'll keep if I dry them right, and they'll grow come thaw." He looked down at her feet, pale against the worn plank. "You'll freeze standing like that. I can't feel the cold just now." He watched her for a moment. "What brought you out here?" She didn't answer at first. "I dreamt last night about a house with smoke curling from the chimney and a baby crying somewhere close." "I think it was mine." Levi didn't speak. The wind stirred the edge of her nightdress. "I never let myself picture anything past a week before," she said. "But I think I want to now." He reached out and took her hand, warming her fingers between his. "Then we'll build it." Later that week, they began clearing the old lean-to near the shed. Levi had built it years ago from scrap pine and forgotten wagon boards, but the roof had held. Hattie swept out the leaves and brambles while Levi brought in nails and a length of canvas he'd stored in the dry box. "I want this for the chickens," she said. "Once we get them. We'll need to ride into town for that. Maybe Cheyenne." She set the broom aside. "That's a long way. I've got enough saved for a pair and feed." She looked up at him then, brows drawn. "You'd use your money for that?" "For us," he said. "It's different now." That night, they sat on the cabin floor by the fire, her back resting against his chest, his arm across her front. She held the seed tin in her hands like it was something sacred. "I used to think love had to come with a cost," she said, voice low. "That it'd feel like kneeling on sharp stone." He didn't say anything, but his grip around her waist tightened. "But this," she went on, "feels like standing still long enough to be known." He laid his cheek against her hair. Spring came early that year. The ground softened by late March, and by April shoots had begun to rise in the tilled square Hattie had cut behind the cabin. Levi built her a fence from split rails, and she tied scraps of red cloth to the corners to keep the mule deer away. They made the trip to Cheyenne in early May, driving the wagon Levi hadn't used in 2 years. Hattie walked through the open market with her hand looped into the crook of his arm. They bought 2 hens and a bantam rooster, along with flour, molasses, a bolt of calico, and a coil of wire for the coop. On the ride back, she dozed against his shoulder while the wagon rocked over the ridges. He didn't wake her until the sun tilted low behind the hills and the smoke from their chimney curled up into the pale sky. By summer, the fence was finished and the garden had sprouted thick and green. Hattie carried a basket on her hip each morning, gathering leaves and snapping off stalks. Levi built a second rain barrel. She made blackberry jam from the wild bramble near the creek, and at night, they sat under the stars with her shawl wrapped around both their shoulders. One night in July, as crickets sang and the warm hush of wind moved through the cottonwoods, Levi turned to her, his hand finding hers in the dark. "There's no preacher for miles," he said, "but I'd marry you here if you'd have me." She leaned into him, her voice soft but certain. "I already do." They stood barefoot in the grass the next morning, with the rooster watching from the fence post and the sun spilling over the ridge. Levi put a ring on her finger, simple silver, hammered from an old coin, and she pressed her forehead to his and whispered, "This is mine now. This life." He kissed her then, slow and sure, and the wind caught in the tall grass behind them like a hymn. Years passed and the land held. The house grew, first a room added off the kitchen, then a small barn. The garden spread, and the hens multiplied. They built shelves for jars and hung herbs from the rafters. In the corner by the hearth, a cradle rocked gently, carved by Levi's hand with a soft blue quilt stitched by Hattie's. Their boy came in late spring, strong lungs and a grip like he already knew what the world was. They named him Elias after no one, just because it felt right. In the evenings, Hattie sat on the porch with the child asleep against her chest, and Levi would come in from the field, dirt on his hands and something steady in his eyes. He'd rest beside her, the baby between them, and they'd listen to the wind moving through the grass, the chickens clucking low in the dusk, and the world breathing easy around them. No one came looking anymore. No one needed to. And in that place, under that sky, they stayed, 2 people made whole by the quiet, by the soil and the sun, by each other. The kind of life that didn't need much speaking, just the sound of footsteps on wood and the feel of a hand held firm through every season. Forever, they were home.